Good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may know me. I am Onwuanibe, the chapter chair of the ANPA DC, Maryland, Virginia chapter. First of all, strong apologies for the delay in getting started. I think we will make up for it with a very quality, exciting dialogue on a very pertinent issue. So on behalf of our chapter, I say welcome to colleagues from ANPA who have joined us from our chapter and other chapters, as well as guests from far and wide. Many of you may be aware that the month of May in numerous health calendars is designated as a mental health awareness month. So our chapter, with that in line, has through the month of May put out various messages through blogs, public service announcements, and short videos on our various social media pages, which I'll encourage everybody to follow us on. These include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. We put out many relevant messages, excellent content to contribute to mental health awareness. It remains a stigma and is one that we want to play our part in reducing. So today's session is a culmination of that effort through the month. And today I think we're bringing to you a very, very special topic on burnout. Burnout affects many of us in the field of medicine, but also in many other high stress professions. So I personally find it fascinating, and I would admit that I myself may be at risk for some burnout. But it is without doubt an important and relevant topic for those of us in healthcare. And as I mentioned earlier, in many other professions, I have friends who are in the business sector, in politics, who are teachers, who are coaches, and it seems to be something that's ubiquitous in modern day societies. So it's therefore a very relevant topic, and it perhaps has become even more so with the disruptions in many routines through the pandemic, which hopefully we are coming out of. So today's discussion is a statement one. It is a live discussion, which is perfect timing as we seem to be coming out of the pandemic. But what we have today is a very, very, very good dialogue among four reputable expert psychiatrists in our chapter. We are very proud of the expertise that we have in ANPA and happy to display it when we have opportunities to do so. So I will introduce our panelists shortly, but first some brief housekeeping. So once again, we have a very unique format today. Our panelists are live in studio. It's going to be a dialogue, an informal format. They will look periodically at the chat and use their discretion to pull questions or comments that our audience makes to the discussion. So we encourage everybody on this forum to use the chat for communication amongst each other and with the panelists. There are others in this panel who have expertise in the topic at hand, and we would also welcome your contribution again through the chat. Once again, I want to thank our chapter, ANPA Education Committee, for putting this together. It's taking a lot of work. Also, our social media committee and team for the effort that they've put in up till this point. I will use this opportunity to now introduce our panelists, beginning with Dr. Angela Onwuanibe. She's a stalwart member of our chapter. She takes the lion's share of this session today in terms of the ideas and the coordination. So Angela, we thank you. She is a psychiatrist that's board certified and practicing for 21 years. She was in a group practice for 11 years and is currently the medical director and group chair of Solutions for Mindfulness, which is a practice in Maryland and Pennsylvania. So Angela, thank you once again for all your work and for leading this today. Next is Dr. Ifeoma Thompson, once again, another stalwart member of our chapter. She is a practicing psychiatrist with Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center and also the University of Maryland Capital Regional Hospital. Ifeoma, thanks once again. Next is Dr. Ikwunga Wonodi, is an MD and also DFA PA, is a medical director and chair of Behavioral Health Service at MedStar Southern Maryland Hospital. He's also an adjunct associate professor of psychiatry at the Maryland Psychiatry Research Center of the University of Maryland. Last but not least is my big brother, Chiadi. Chiadi is an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Johns Hopkins University. His expertise is in dementia and presenile dementia. So we welcome all our panelists. We say thank you once again for your time and effort. And at this point, we would hand over the discussion to Angela to lead the way.
Thank you, Aham, for that wonderful introduction. I think for the purposes of this meeting, we're just going to introduce ourselves as, friends and colleagues that we are. My name is Angela.
Chiadi Onyike.
Ikwunga Wonodi.
Ifeoma Thompson. So we're just going to call us, it's a casual atmosphere, it's an evening chat. We appreciate you joining us either on your ride home or kind of as you're clearing out from the office. And we thought this particular topic was really interesting and important, essentially because of what we've all gone through, this COVID-19, this shared trauma that we've all experienced this past year plus. And particularly for all of us, for physicians and healthcare professionals, it has brought on significant new challenges. I mean, every day a new mandate in the office and the hospital to wear N95 or not to wear N95. It's been, for even our dress code changed. You see us in scrubs. When the COVID pandemic started in March, that probably was the first time most of us have worn scrubs in 20 years. Yep. The hospitals brought new mandates, and for every profession, teachers even, suddenly had to do all their lessons online. They had to report their lessons at the same time as teaching, and some of us were just even struggling with technology. Most of us went to telehealth. That was a whole new struggle to figure out, how to even upload a Zoom link. So it's been a very tough, rough year. And I know, we're going to hear from the experts, but I know that we're all burnt out. I know I am. The issue is, we came up with this topic about burnout. We couldn't really even agree, but we know that it has caused a lot of people to rethink their careers. A lot of physicians have rethought their careers. Do I continue to practice? So many of us have retired early. A lot of us also dealt with personal tragedies and loss of family and friends and colleagues, and that brought new layers of grief in terms of what do we do? What kind of job is this that we have? And so, there were a lot of issues.
Right. Initially, we deliberated on the title for this webinar. We couldn't quite settle on one, but I mean, of course, eventually we did. That's why we went. So, and ANPA is always outward looking. We're always carrying out events. We're educating the public. We're enlightening the public. We're talking about immunization. We're talking about healthcare as it affects people in their communities where they live and work. However, like Angela just said, we thought that this should be inward looking, something that focuses on us, the members of ANPA, and so we gravitated to physician burnout. And that's what we'll be talking about, and what we discuss relevant to physician burnout might be applicable to others, high stress or low stress careers, and we're happy to get your feedback or questions. And then on deciding that, we said, what is this physician burnout? What is it?
What does it mean?
What does it mean? What about it,
Yeah, it's one of those things there's some things in this world that people say, it when you see it, but we won't go into the other things. We'll be talking about burnout specifically. So if one goes into it here, what people have used as a formal definition, at least for the purposes of writing papers and doing research, is to describe it as a psychological syndrome, which firstly people have emotional exhaustion. So people are depleted, if you will. And with that comes being overwhelmed. It becomes, your capacity to mount efforts to do the work is lower. Vigilance may drop. That's when people can become more prone to errors. People get detached, so that's another aspect of it. And that detachment can translate, for example, to indifference, to cynicism. It can translate to going through the motions, which then patients may pick up on, and that can create its own sort of problem. And it can also result in in demoralization, for want of a better term, demoralization. So that comes with a variety of negative emotions. As I mentioned, indifference, cynicism, anxiety. People feel overwhelmed, get anxious, and the threshold for that anxiety can become lower because the person is overloaded. And then speak up. Thank you. So a person can be overloaded because they're, can be anxious because they're overloaded with work. So I've just got a signal that my voice was a little too low. So let me quickly recap. You can have emotional exhaustion. And so people feel depleted and the effort drops, the vigilance drops, people are prone to errors. One can become detached, that creates distance between you and your patients. It also puts you can potentially put you in a situation where you're really going through the emotions as opposed to being properly engaged in the work. One can become demoralized, depression, anxiety.
That demoralization, that demoralization is something I can connect to. You guys, that feeling of, for me, I don't know how it has been for you, and I'm excited to hear what your thoughts have been. For me, burnout resembles that constant feeling of, the work doesn't stop. It's like you go to bed in the morning, you have that feeling when you wake up in the morning and the alarm goes off and you feel like you slept 1 hour and the alarm is saying 7 a.m., which means you slept 7. and then you wake up as tired as you went to bed. That feeling of being at the end of a conveyor belt where tasks keep on piling on. Just one thing after the other. You just feel like, I can't take this anymore. I don't know, what has it been like for you?
Well, when you started with, you're giving a synopsis on the whole year. And one thing that's happened in the pandemic is that we've all adopted virtual technology to work. Teachers, we in healthcare. So, and that's something we'll talk about. We'll dive deeper into it. But for me, for example, when my mother was here over summer last year, so, it's 9 to 5, it doesn't work, come back at 5. And, she says, welcome in my language, as we finished for today. And it became a source of concern and irritation. So I had to sit with her and just say welcome, because and then I'll sit down and I have 4 hours of notes in electronic health records I'll be doing. So and then that will go until 9 or 10. So it never really stops.
Yeah, that's interesting because for me, in terms of what we've been feeling throughout this burnout, throughout this pandemic time is, for me, it's this sense of overwhelmingness that, you're trying to get your work done and feeling that you're forever running and running and running. And then the other things that Angela mentioned that added to it when we had issues with PPEs, when we had issues with ordinary gloves, ordinary doing a different PPE for another patient, for different patients, and all that created a kind of sense of, just being overwhelmed. And I found myself being very irritable at work, having to, before even getting out of my car, just having to do a 30 seconds deep breathing meditation before stepping out, just to get myself prepared for almost like a combat ahead, So I had to catch myself when I started getting, talk to yourself, you're after a psychiatrist, you can't get irritable at others, be it patients, be it workers. So we are constantly looking at ourselves and, talking to ourselves just to get through what normally used to be a very ordinary period.
Yeah, it's like, so it's like, it is exhausting.
Yes,
it is exhausting. Just nonstop. Sometimes my phone goes off. I know it's, and it's a work-related, sometimes my phone goes off, it's a work-related call. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. You just don't feel like picking up the phone, but you have to. So it's very draining. Anxiety is one thing that's been mentioned, sometimes you almost feel like you're depressed, but it's work related, and so maybe one question that comes up sometimes is, how is this different from, say, depression, or should someone go and start taking
antidepressant
or some antidepressant?
Yeah, that's
What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's interesting because I was reading one thing in Medscape when one of the doctors said, well, maybe these people are having issues with, identifying that they are depressed.
Mm-hmm.
But being that, depression may come further down when people get burnt out and continues to be so without, treatment, without addressing it. But initially, the burnt out in the early phases is not really depression and it's not anxiety. Let's take one by one the what you've mentioned as the syndrome of this burnout. The syndrome is an emotional syndrome that first manifests as emotional exhaustion. So you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted, but you are exhausted due to work. The environment that keeps you exhausted and makes you overwhelmed is the work situation. You are actually able to perform when you're back home, when you're doing other things that you enjoy doing. You're still able to enjoy other things that you enjoy doing, but the overwhelmness is at work. And then, so that's kind of different from what we see in anxiety and in depression. And when you talk about depersonalization, that detachment is what you see at work. You feel that you're no longer present in your work. You're not as present as you used to be. You're kind of detached. You're detached from the work. You're detached from patients. You're detached from your colleagues. Different from what we feel when there's depression, when there's anxiety. We see derealization in anxiety. We can see depersonalization in something like trauma, but it's not trauma. Most of the people don't have any pre-existing mental health issues. They never were diagnosed with mental health issues, but this is what they're seeing. The incidence is happening more work-related than anything else. They're able to be present at home when they're at home with their family. And the last one is the lack of sense of accomplishment. You have most physicians, they want to being a doctor because they love it and they feel very accomplished. Treating patients, talking to other clinicians and their colleagues, but you find yourself doubting am I really accomplishing something? Am I really putting in as much effort as I used to do in the past? So these are the things that, different from when you're depressed. When people are depressed, they're really overwhelming feeling of worthlessness and hopelessness. Anxiety is totally, generalized feelings of anxiousness and other thoughts that go with it. But for these feelings of non-accomplishment and lack of accomplishment is related to work. It's mostly in the work. When you're back home, you feel comfortable, you feel accomplished being a father, being a mother, being a whatever you are back home. So it's really work related. It's not really those anxiety or depression. However, if unaddressed and if untreated, could further, go into those areas in mental health.
So what causes this? What's causing burnout? It seems to be very common. I mean, you talk in the hallway, everybody can relate in some way. But
well, one thing in terms of work, one thing that's changed, and like you said, Chiadi, so what this syndrome of physician burnout predates the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely.
What the COVID pandemic has done is just it highlighted and made exaggerated it, and then actually fast forwarded our adoption of electronic health records. So this is already happening, but in the past year, that was something that just took off because everyone was going virtual. So one workplace related stressor is the use of electronic health records. And we classify it as health information technology, where you have the electronic medical records that we all engage with. Behind it,
the order entry system.
Yeah, the order entry system that runs behind it to send prescriptions, orders for radiology, lab work, etc. And then there's the ERP, which is the Enterprise Resource Planning, which the organization uses, to manage finances and other operations. So what this whole health information technology has really done is it's improved efficiency, it's improved and reduced costs for organizations, reduced medication errors, which means that patients are safer. And where we get stuck as providers is that electronic health records have improved the quality of care we provide, and improved the returns for the organizations we work for our practices, but has burdened us with more and more work. So
yeah, so if one is looking in the literature, for example, then what you're seeing as a consequence of the electronic, EMR, but not just EMR, there are a variety of training mandates now around safety and so on. And so you find that people are now bogged down in administrative things. So now work hours are longer, and one doesn't have any autonomy. You don't even have the ability to push back until much later to eat my lunch or things like that.
Right.
We stay up late, even though we're sleep deprived. Either catching up on notes and so on. But perhaps there are also other factors. So I was reading somewhere, burnout is more frequent in women than in men. So I don't know, is this true?
That's a live wire. When we talk about the male-female issues, it's a live wire now. So but I think it's important because, and I don't know what people have to say, but
I actually think
studies.
Studies are right. Burnout is more in women than in men. But there's a caveat to it. The experiences of a woman in a workplace, especially in medicine, is totally different from that of a man. As I also found somewhere that it says like about 54% of medical students, freshman medical students are usually female. So more females are coming into medicine than before. And with that, at every stage,
and some medical schools, they're the majority.
Yeah, they're the majority. Yeah, and in every stage, there are challenges that they feel that they face that are unique to females. Being in the training phase, the training is so long. In medicine, you train so long. Therefore, you postpone things like marriage, relationship, fertility, having children. Those things are postponed. And then you come into medicine, residency, even practicing. There's the financial burden that you've taken out loans, and then, and you get married. And so a woman's job is twofold. She has a job at home, she has a job as a physician. And then the experiences of a woman is totally different. Women face more more questioning at work. If there's any issues they may face, they may be looked at as emotionally fragile if they should react in certain ways. They face more harassment at work, be it from their colleague, be it from other patients, be it from other clinicians that are not necessarily physicians. And then they have the mental burden at home that they have things to take care of at home. They have to balance the home front and the work front. So dual career women that, especially physicians, it's very challenging. So I also saw somewhere that some physicians even have to, mention 3 times or 4 times to putting the word doctor when they're talking to their patients, so that the patients know that they're actually talking to a physician. I myself have talked to patients, introduced myself, had my name tag. When they finish, they'll tell me, oh, I wasn't seen by a doctor today. So I said, I just talked to you. So it happens a lot. So, I don't take it personally, but it's something that is there, but it's something that is challenging to females. So when all this put together, you're balancing the home front, mental energy at home, and not a lot of energy at work, and trying to strive to be that physician, because for a woman, you have to do it 110 times to prove that you can do it more so than.
And then I think that's a great argument, because we know fully well that we can do the 110%. And I think, first of all, we, all of us as a group, we need to understand time dynamics, because I think women want to do what they need to do at work, and they want to do what they need to do at home. And I don't think it's just women, it's men too. It's everybody. As physicians, we have this full role, and we talk about this work-life balance, but we can't balance work life because we all get 168 hours in a week. So understanding the concept of time is that time is not flexible. It doesn't move. You know, we only get 168 hours a week. So how we use that time, and you know, if you don't protect your time or you don't take your time back, people just run away with it. You have all sorts of messages. Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And I think it's not necessarily, you know, choosing what we do with our time is critical. Choosing what we do, even as if, you know, Ifeoma talked about women and the home life balance and being one myself, I mean, we have to make those choices. Because each time you say yes to something, for all of you that are showing up today on this show, either by audio on your way home from work, or sitting in your office a little extra later, or going home and listening to this, you've given up something. You've given up time with your family.
Yep.
You've given up your evening job, for those of you that ride a bike. So what I'm trying to say is that whenever we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else.
It's an opportunity cost.
It's an opportunity cost, and being more aware of that opportunity cost is critical, because we have to make those judgments every day. And if we don't realize it, if I say yes to a meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning, well, I can get it in really quickly, but I've said no to my morning routine. If I take a meeting at 6:30 in the evening, I've said no to dinner with my spouse, my partner. You said no to going to your kids' swim meet. If you do if you take a weekend call, you know, or cover for a colleague, yes, the colleague is happy that you were able to cover for him, but you inherently said no to spending time with your family. So making ourselves aware of that opportunity cost is important. Whenever you say yes to something, we have to remember time doesn't expand. It's fixed.
Give it a summer.
It doesn't expand. 168 days, Ikwunga, 168 hours in a week. So time doesn't expand. Energy can flex up and down, and so can our resources. We can talk about that later, but I just want us to realize that time doesn't expand, and just be more aware of when we say yes and take on things. We need to take our time back. When we keep taking on things, we're also saying no. Every yes contains a no.
Right.
And so when you want to look at your yeses and nos, because you know you don't want to say no to the people that are important to you. If you miss your son's swim meet or your daughter's, you know, class or ballet class or graduation because you're doing something else with somebody else, I mean, that person, you may have pleased them, but then you have said no to the most important people in your life. So kind of all of us being aware of every time we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else.
And there's a way too, right, of learning how to say no.
Yeah.
That's something, right? So you're
Yes,
talking about.
yes,
Well,
we're talking about that.
And it is very important because, you know, in medicine, we're trained to not concede that we can't. You know, you're supposed to be strong every time. You're supposed to be able to do it. You're supposed to do it quickly, efficiently, round the clock if necessary. And so that's a challenge.
Yeah, and that's probably why we most people that have burnout don't really you know, admit that they have burnout. Some, not that they don't admit, sometimes they don't even realize because they keep pushing themselves and continue and not really know that you know, they are, you know, failing in health in some way.
Yeah, so
you had some statistics for us?
well, yeah, I guess we've talked about some of it. It's very common. It's up to 65% of physicians. By the way, it's, you know, they mentioned at the beginning something about the pandemic and its contributions, and it's also it's highlighting this issue. But you know, when you look at the numbers, most people in national surveys, there was a recent national survey, I think it was last year, late last year, December. 71% of respondents say that burnout for them was a problem before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So the majority of people are saying it's a problem before the pandemic. Talked about work-life balance. The work-life balance, it's about, the numbers have been declining since 2014. So now it's less than 40% of physicians feel they have a healthy work-life balance. And that's a big number.
Less than 50% of us feel.
You know, across specialty fields, you know, if I remember correctly, across specialty fields, it's up to 15% of physicians now talk about having depression. You know, it varies depending on the specialty, and that perhaps makes sense. You know, some specialties are more demanding physically, for example, than others.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult problem. I guess the bottom line, the question that arises is, you know, first of all, what is happening to physicians as a result of burnout that's not recognized?
Yeah.
And then what do you do about it?
Yeah, you mentioned depression, burnout at initial phases, we did say that it's not anxiety, it's not depression, but if unchecked, can go down. You first start with a physician feeling overwhelmed, detached from work. Those can lead to things like, it just keeps going down spiraling down. A physician that is feeling that way is prone to making medical errors. They are prone to have difficulties in, relating with their patients, themselves, and others. They could be prone to litigation because medical errors increase. They could also be so overwhelmed that they may consider leaving medicine entirely. It's recorded that a whole lot of physicians left medicine because of pandemic, not necessarily because they were, scared of the getting COVID, but down the line, some people felt so overwhelmed that they left medicine entirely. So that could mean loss of job, medical errors, litigation, and we know that for physicians to leave prematurely already, we have, limited number of physicians. It says it takes like to replace a physician, you will have to spend like $160,000 to $1 million, to replace one physician, depending on the specialty. So that really affects the community as a whole. So, and if further down the line, you don't get recognized because, again, physicians being physicians may just continue, and they become so overwhelmed, they start slipping into depression, they become depressed, they become isolated, and they make more errors, and then we see the second victim syndrome comes in. Second victim syndrome, it says, it's just a description of, you make medical errors. Of course, nobody wants you to make errors. Even if there's poor patient outcome, even if there's no error, maybe just a simple poor patient outcome, a patient didn't get well, you have, a physician feels, victimized because they are reprimanded for that. They are made to feel that they don't know what they're doing. They become isolated, they become callous, they become more detached. And so depression sets in. And then, of course, physicians don't report as much as others when they are feeling depressed, when they are feeling worse. So they don't report it, then it continues down the lane. They become more depressed, they start using people's, I'm not saying it works, it goes that way for everybody. For the most part, when people don't address their depression, don't address their anxiety, they are prone to medicate with other stuff. And those other things are drugs, start using drugs and alcohol and keeps spiraling down, and then they may become suicidal. Not necessarily in this order that I've just stated it, but it could happen that way. We've seen that physicians have killed themselves. We have examples, even amongst us, ANPA members, and the most one in the social media, the young physician, just 49, Dr. Bree, that committed suicide at New York during this pandemic. She was, from what we read, she was a high-flying physician. She was very good at her job. She was even the clinical director in her department. Got the COVID, got better, came back to work barely 10 days. That shows how dedicated she was. Came back 10 days later, saw that something wasn't working well. Her dad stated that word, she was more detached than usual. That word, so that tells you that, something is going on, but eventually she died. We don't know exactly what happened, but it's an example of how all this could lead to that situation if it's not addressed.
Sorry, have you finished? I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just saw some interesting, I'm monitoring the chat here. So we have a comment from Auntie Nwando. Great discourse. Just a quick comment about work-life balance. I prefer the term work-life integration, as we, aka physician moms, are constantly multitasking and juggling work, home, integrating both, trying to identify that sweet spot. It's really difficult in practice to separate work and life. The key is to find a way to bring both closer together in a meaningful way. And of course, meaningful means different things to different people. Comments? So comments.
Well, I think that's kind of, we talked about that it is difficult to do that. And I think even though we feel that we're doing it, and that goes to the concept of time again, even though we think we're doing it, I think sometimes we're not. We're robbing somebody, we're robbing Peter, we're paying Paul, we're robbing Paul. So I think Anke is right when we talk about integration, and we can't really separate ourselves from our work, but we do have to try. One of the things we're talking about, and I know Peter was talking about ways to tame the beast, and talk a little bit about that. But one of the things we're talking about is how do we get this time back? And really, one of the main ways of getting your time back is the art of saying no. And I think a lot of times people are very concerned about how do we say, I don't want to offend Anthea, for instance. She might be having something tomorrow and I don't want to offend them. We said earlier, if I say yes to her, I'm saying no to somebody, something else. But there are ways to say no. And for those of you who kind of do a little bit of reading in the business field, William Ury, a Harvard professor, talked about the positive no. So it's the art of the positive no. So how does one say no in a way that people don't feel upset? So he calls it the yes, no, yes. Okay, so it's an interesting concept, and we can give a few examples. I actually had one with Ikwunga yesterday, but he calls it the yes, no, yes. So first of all, when somebody asks you for something, first of all, you're going to say no ahead of time.
Can you type it up?
Okay.
Can you type up the list?
Ikwunga, I think you saying typing up the list that we're reading from today, I think is excellent. I think it's a great idea.
Example.
That's the example. My handwriting is horrible, so I think I agree with you. It should be typed. However, my secretary is away for this week, and I won't be able to type it myself because I don't type. But I agree with you absolutely that it's better for it to be typed. And my thought would be go through the handwritten one. If there are areas you don't understand my handwriting, take a picture and send it to me. So I think what we're trying to say is that we do have to learn to say no. So kind of
in a constructive
way.
Then
Yes, no, yes.
Then I say, oh, what a great idea.
What a great idea.
Okay, so let me interrupt. And, yeah, no, this is great. So there's another question here. Can you also speak to how you deal with working as an African Black professional and the burden that comes with that, and how that compounds burnout?
Yes. Oh my God, that's a live one. So I'm going to help you.
Imagine being an African and a female all together.
Triple whammy.
Yeah.
Foreign female
with an accent. Yeah, that is
there's a lot of issues. And I think for me, one thing, and I'm going to give Ifeoma to give an example, but one thing that actually brings a real example to my mind is this period that we've all been in scrubs. So I know for those of you that work in hospitals, a lot of times there's a hierarchy of different colors of scrubs. So one of the hospitals that I work in, I consult in UPenn, the hierarchy is that the doctors wear whatever color they want. So the nurses wear deep blue, the cleaning staff wear wine red, the residents wear light blue, nurses deep blue, techs wear green. And I just happen to like red. So every day I'm in the office, I'm in bed, and every time I go into a patient's room, it's always, oh, thank you for coming. What about breakfast? Please take out the trash. So I had to stop wearing red. And then my badge will be on that says Dr. Wonodi, and I'll have my clear colored badge that says physician. So I think there is that overlay, and it does contribute to burnout. But I think part of what we're going to do is also talk about, yes, we know what the causes of burnout are and how bad it feels, because we're all burnt out. We know that. Yes. But the question then is, what do we do about it?
Right.
So what do we do?
And that relates to a question here, which is, would you still choose to be a physician?
Absolutely.
So
every day, every waking moment, and psychiatrists too.
All right. And so if we would
psychiatry is the way to go.
So since we're not running from the profession and we're not regretting it, what do we do?
Yeah. What do we do? So reclaiming some of the time, right?
Right.
So how do we reclaim the time? Can you talk about it?
Well, one of the things I have a site here that Aham is going to post up in the chat. We talk about taming the beast. We want to tame this health information technology beast. And there are several things that can be done. One would be to cut the documentation for physicians. And the other is for physicians and we usually work in silos, even in large hospitals. We work in silos, but if we come together as physicians in that organization and mandate, and this is all recommendation from the American Medical Association, and mandate that they pledge to be responsive, to take acts, deploy acts that reduce physician burnout. So that there's prioritization of processes or policies to reduce, to recognize it, and to work with physicians and providers. So it's not only physicians, providers, nurse practitioners, advanced practice providers. So that'll be one. The other, and then we need to tame the in-basket. So you come in the morning and your in-basket is full. And one way to do that is just have more efficient team management. So if you have a more cohesive team, then you can all capitalize on the interdependence, especially if it's an interdisciplinary, nurse. For us, it'd be nurse, mental health worker, social worker, physician, nurse practitioner,
So just to jump, not to interrupt you per se, but someone has asked, I forget who, is this different between hospitalists and primary physicians? So I'm imagining that many primary physicians perhaps are practicing in a solo practice environment.
And it's even more challenging.
So how does this team work?
Right. It'll be more challenging because like some of the statistics we talked about, there's another, so one is by specialty. There's some specialties that have a higher rate of physician burnout. But there's also groups like primary care providers. Primary care practice, so here's the benefit of working in a big hospital. Big hospital has a centralized information technology department with an IT crew. But your private practice, you want to have the right electronic health record, but you don't have in-house IT. So you struggle with it. So it's also important, even if you're in a private practice, to reach out to others and what you do, and making an investment in Dragon. If you use Dragon dictation, then you reduce it 3 times faster than typing.
So in other words, we need to become more facile with technology, and there'll be the dictation methods, there'll be other efficiencies to be found that have to be.
And even use work process, improve your work process flow. As an example, when we meet, one of our first meetings when Chiadi just gave a great idea, because we come to team and there's paperwork on the table. If you just zoom on and say, well, this paperwork can happen at the end of the team. While doing team, you can do some additional typing right into your laptop.
And then I think that was a great point in terms of the question that Ikwunga is saying, is that we really all need to be working at the top of our licenses. Right. So if you're a physician, one of the ways to reduce, like you talk about this teamwork, is really to work at the top of your license. If you're the doctor, you're the physician, you're the team lead, you make the decisions. Do you necessarily have to be the one typing the IT keys? Do you have to be the one calling the patients? So the more we work at the top of our licenses and have other people do those things, that's one way of turning that investment and improving, working in smaller teams as opposed to working in bigger teams. Sometimes other people put that pressure on you. Doc, can you make that call? Or this person emailed you, can you email him back? Why would you be the one emailing him back? You're deciding about his treatment. You're deciding the surgery. You're deciding medication loading. So push back on it. Let's push back. Let's work at the top of our license, because the decisions we make as physicians and allied healthcare providers, they can't make it. No. Your social worker can't make it. Your case management staff can make it. Your case manager might want you to make that phone call to the patient, but she can make the phone call, and then you can adjust the medication dose. So I think part of that is, let's all commit to working at the top of our license, because those other tasks we do contribute to that burnout. And if each time we consciously come to work every day and say, today is a good day and I'm going to work at the top of my license, it takes everybody around you a little bit of time to get used to it. But they will. They will get used to it.
It is very difficult because sometimes when you are, especially in psychiatry, when you're, assuming you see a patient for the first time, you're taking history, you need that collateral, somebody easily could get that collateral from you. But some of us,
they have to get it.
The one time that you have to make that phone call and it takes away your 30 minutes, 20 minutes.
We have to commit.
I've butted heads with social workers who are not used to working with it, because they say, well, some families anxious. So can we do a family meeting to talk to them? And my question is, what is the purpose of the family meeting? If it is to make the family smile or feel better, someone else should do it. So that's the kind of pushback, delegation, saying no.
And everything
So
can
yes,
be
no, yes.
Yes, yes, no, yes, and everything can be delegated.
Yeah.
Don't fool yourselves. We all know we've lost friends, we've lost family members, we've lost patients, we've lost colleagues.
Mhm.
And one of our favorite colleagues we lost in our hospital, but the work still goes on.
Mhm.
She was a very important, integral part of our hospital. You know, early 40s young woman as alive and bouncing, but the work still goes on. Nothing has changed. So we have to really get away from that fact that we're, so important, and we need to learn how to delegate, and delegate. Everything can be delegated.
Oh, yeah.
You can supervise, and those are muscles that we have to train. And when I tell you, you get your no muscle on. It's like every muscle, you got to build it. You got to build the muscle.
I can specify here. Aham is going to be posting this, so everyone can get it. But it's really an excellent resource, especially the question about people who are in private practice and community practice settings. It's called the AMA's Burnout Management Tip for the week. You register with it, and they send you exclusive expert-driven insights on managing burnout, quick tips on streamlining your workflows, and also resources to improve professional satisfaction. So you should check it out, register with it, and it'll be in your inbox. It'll be something good in your inbox.
So what about you, Chiadi? What do you do?
What do I do?
How do you avoid it? What are some of your strategies?
So in the work environment, it's delegating.
Delegating.
And doing so ruthlessly.
Yeah,
I like that word.
You have to.
And so just to give an example, and then you have to find ways to be efficient with the electronic medical record. When I'm on service on the wards and I leave round, my notes are all done. I don't let the team move to the next patient until I've finished and signed that note.
Yeah.
And then you just have to find ways to be efficient about making sure that you're not making people watch you typing for 20 minutes. So you have to be efficient about your typing. I use templates. I design my own templates so that it fits me, not some bureaucrat. And that enables me to be to be faster in creating the note. But when I leave rounds and leave the ward, all my notes are done, signed. When I finish clinic, I don't leave the building without the notes signed. I don't take them home.
Okay. So finishing up is important.
That's
finishing up is
crucial. Is what you do.
It is crucial. So there's a comment here. This is from your brother Paul. I didn't know Paul now has a medical degree, but anyway. And I think he's dialed in from Nigeria. So for those of you who are doing that, thank you very much. So the borders between work and leisure have been rolled back. We need to find ways to embrace this new norm, both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And I would even go beyond that and say, this managing time, not overextending yourself. It's not just so that you can keep working.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to sweeten life too.
That's the way.
So that's the second part of it.
That's really the second part of the question that we have.
What are you doing to enjoy yourself? Because after all, at the end of the day, we get these degrees and we get into these professions. When you really boil it down, it's to earn a living. And you have to do the living.
Yeah.
So you have to find recreation. You have to find time for the things that you actually enjoy that are for you.
Especially when you feel this at your time.
Yeah. And for me, yes, I think that's really important. I do various things, I like the word sweeten. For many people, it's different. I love taking walks. I love, going out. Of course, the COVID situation and the isolation hasn't helped, but you can do it in different ways. Take work with family, take work with, meditate.
Talking about meditation. So I think that's really important. And we're psychiatrists, we wanted to make sure that we kind of mention one of those skills that we all use. And I think when we talk about meditation, everybody's used to that quiet meditation where you have to listen to your deep breath and you have to breathe in very slowly and have a quiet environment. But what I wanted to just spend a minute and a half teaching was meditation that is actually upbeat. That is actually noisy, because all meditation really means is trying to be present. So I'm actually throwing something out to the audience there, and Chiadi Aham is with us. And so what I'm going to ask, we have 2 gift certificates, Starbucks cards, $25. Aham will tell us who won. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play the Beatles song. So it's copyrighted, we're playing it on Zoom in a private gathering. We're going to play the Beatles song. twist and shout. And I'm going to ask people to tell me how many twists did they hear. And if anyone who gets it right, we have 2 prizes. We're going to send it digitally. That's in the digital world. Aham will tell us and give us a phone number of who won. So let us know when you're ready to start. Okay, so let me explain it again. So it's a Beatles song, and you're going to listen to how many twists in that song. And then you're going to put into the chat the number of twists you heard.
Is it twist or
Twist, just twist.
Twist.
And then Aham will, let us know who won, okay? So once he sets the music, I'm going to listen to mine here. I don't know whether if we play, I think the audio actually might hear it.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think the audio might hear. Let's do a tester because we have a general mic, so the mic actually might hear it. Let me try. Okay, very good. And so I think the goal of that was it's 1 minute and 40 seconds, but it feels much longer. And the goal of that is for us to remember that meditation is being present, and you can actually do that even in your day. And for those of you that don't really like, regular music or English music, we actually have a really good one. And if you can play for just 20 seconds while people are sending you their responses, just play Port Harcourt Sun, because that also is a really good meditation music. Nobody would believe it.
It's very repetitive.
Yes, it's a very good meditation music. So go ahead and play it so that people can hear. And what we're looking for in Port Harcourt Sun is how many Port Harcourts.
People love it. We already.
Yeah, how many Port Harcourts? Go ahead, Aham.
He's already started.
Thank you. Okay, so the goal of that was really to show you that you can also do it Port Harcourt Sun. And the idea behind that, even in your busy day, you have your earphones at work, as allied health providers, your hair covers it if you're female. If you're male, it's fine. They might think you're listening to Netscape chat. But the whole idea is that, for us to take, it's a 1 minute, 30-second break where you refocus your mind on the present and kind of helping you count through a number of sounds or number of twists or number of Port Harcourts kind of gets your mind to kind of get, to be still a little bit. You feedback the music. So that's just kind of one of the strategies I think is important to use. And you can find whatever meditation music works best for you, what kind of meditation strategies that work best for you. I think that's important for us to do. So, okay, so other things that we know, getting your diet straight, journaling are things that we can do to continue to avoid burnout, just writing things, avoiding people that burn you out. So hanging out with this group of people, as you can see, we're all energized. But you also, part of burnout is that you always want to focus on, auditing your relationships around you, making sure you're spending more time with people that give you positive energy and teach you stuff, and spend less time with people that make you feel kind of drained. And that's you just have to be honest. You have to be honest to yourself. In terms of how do we survive this period? If you
and beyond.
And beyond. And sometimes you can avoid the people that drain your energy, but you want to be very mindful of the time. You're going into this office meeting, you know that 3 people there are energy sappers. So you kind of gear up, you meditate before you go in, you think about it when you're there, consciously, so you don't feel sapped. You don't have that irritability. So kind of doing things like that, I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And sleep hygiene.
And sleep hygiene. The quality of the sleep as well as the quantity of your sleep. And
a simple way to get it right is to fix your wake up time and then adjust your bedtime.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Have any more questions? Anything in closing?
Well, someone had asked earlier about income, but it seems to me that's more a big global issue. And so as we think about this, for example, through ANPA, since this is under the auspices of ANPA, let's focus on ANPA for a minute. I would, if I were talking to ANPA leadership, I would say we need 2 kinds of initiatives. We need things that are inward facing. ANPA looking after the membership. Through various kinds of programs. Some of them even things as simple as meditation programs and so on, and mentorship programs. And then there's the outward-facing thing, which has to do with advocacy, which clearly ANPA can't do alone because there are very big systems issues that need to be addressed. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know, what would you add?
I mean, I would definitely say that, we, even as the chapter DMV, our DMV chapter, I mean, we have, different officers, we have the finance officer, we have the secretary, and I think all organizations are moving towards this now, where we actually need a wellness officer. We need somebody. Do we have somebody in the DMV, or do we have somebody that is elected, even in ANPA, that has that information? Do people have to wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning to say, I'm having an emergency? Can we catch ourselves before burnout? Can we even have groups of us? Like the other day, we were all in here, we're doing our own PhQ nights. Can we even as a group, like let's say we all go to, Aham's house, for instance, and part of it as we're all chatting before we even start, we're 15 physicians or 15 people there. And so, this is a quarterly thing, let's check our PhQ nights ourselves. And we, so kind of just destigmatizing how bad we feel and what is going on in our lives, and actually having a solid number to look at it and doing it as a routine thing, even among us, even in the chapter, will prevent those, long-term consequences that someone talked about. So what is the role of a wellness officer? Is the chapter open to supplying one that knows what are the crisis lines? What do you need to do if you're feeling upset at work? What do you need to do if you have a family member that's upsetting you? What are some of the, so just like Chiadi said, looking inwards as well as what can we do to support ourselves, as, the ANPA community, the DMV community, and individual, and we think the psychiatrists are particularly well positioned because that's what we do every day. That's what we do for our patients. So it would be a privilege to begin to think about how do we institute these roles, especially given this pandemic of burnt out providers.
On that note of inward facing, inward looking, caring for ourselves, this wellness officer would be very important, because there's one thing that, when we were thinking about this, when we started, we also recognized that it's not very great for a physician to complain to someone else. Right? When you're complaining, all they're looking at you and say, man, you're a doctor.
What do you have to complain about?
What do you have to?
You're making 1 million. Please let me see.
I beg. Make a rest. So this inward looking for us, for wellness officer, and this symposium, this webinar, to keep that off and make it, very relevant in our lives is really important.
And I was just going to add that it's not just us with mental health skills and credentials, but also it's everyone. For example, we could have regular workshops about how to be efficient with the EMR. That's not specific to any profession, or other kinds of efficiencies. People can share tips. But we need a forum where that can happen. So I know ANPA DMV has been good at putting various kinds of
forums together.
So,
and one of the things we talk about in institutions too is that even not necessarily just among mental health, but usually even if you have a meeting or a forum, one of the things could be to start it with even like a wellness tip. What did everybody eat today? I mean, just reminding ourselves about diet habits, exercise habits, sleep, and then just constantly making that part of what we do every day. So as to destigmatize the issue of
extremely important. Making it a habit, making it constant, will help in destigmatizing it, because as we all said, physicians don't like to complain, don't like to be seen as weak, want to be strong, want to keep going, but we all know, don't want to say no, but we all know that they're human beings and they hurt just like everybody else.
Well, thank you everybody for having us, and we enjoyed talking with you. I hope you found a few things useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panel. I think we would all agree that this has been a great discussion, a dialogue on a very, very important topic. We've learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot. A lot of nuggets were dropped today. I think delegation is something I believe in, and I like the phrase, delegate everything that's delegatable. With that in mind, we're going to delegate this panel to be our wellness officer for ANPA, which is a recommendation of the panel. And I hope that this recommendation will not be delegated. So we're putting a fast on you all. I think Ikwunga has pointed out us to a good resource. I'll take a look at it myself, the AMA Burnout Management Guide. I think that's what he called it. So I will look at it myself, and I encourage everyone else to do so as well. Angela has mentioned that we should avoid people that provoke burnout, people that burn you out is the way she put it. So I think, yes, that totally makes sense. And then the issue of meditating, that's something I never do. Willing to try. I think these are the experts, and it makes sense to follow the experts, which is what Joe Biden has told us through 2020. So anyway, without further ado, we'll say thank you to everyone for your participation. This is an ongoing series of exercises by our chapter to educate each other and also to educate the public. Sorry once again for the delays in getting it started. It was due to faults beyond our control, but I hope you will appreciate the time was worth your wait eventually. We will continue to announce upcoming events through our various pages. I hope that you would follow some of our pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, and we also have a page on LinkedIn. We challenge ourselves to continue to put out good quality educational information for our membership and for the public at large. Thank you once again for your time and your patience. And thanks again to the panel for the efforts and for pulling off what I think most of us would agree was a very good session today. Good night, everybody.